Hello everyone and welcome back to Icebane Gaming. Today I have another art time lapse. Today I drew a Fennec character talking to my old OC May. So, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so I started off by trying to shape out the head for this new character. And I decided I wanted her to look fed up and a bit goth. So I went hard on eyeshadow and all that sort of stuff and added a choker. I ended up deciding on pastel goth as the full overall aesthetic since Fennecs usually have a very bright sandy fur tone. I spent quite a bit of time messing around with the proportions of the head to make sure it felt right, and I lowered the eyelids to make it look like she was just a bit PO'd, you know? And I ended up choosing to go with a tube top sort of thing, just gently resting on the body. I ended up trying to draw some proportions underneath the clothes so that I knew exactly where things would be positioned, and I worked with the positions of all those things to make the arms feel like they were the right length. After I finished drawing this Fennec character, I decided that I would draw May, and I decided to go with a full side profile, and I took a while to figure out how I wanted the face to be laid out, because I don't often draw things in a full side profile. But yeah, since Fennecs are very small, decided to make it look like May was kneeling down and mocking this Fennec character. However, I had it in my headcanon that they would be friends. So, a pastel goth and a goth. I spent a bit of time trying to figure out how this hand would work. Usually I don't struggle with hands, but every now and then I do. Ultimately, I think I ended up sticking with this one in particular. Decided to mess with the mouth a little bit, make it look a little bit more like she's teasing, and yeah. Sorry for page flips, they allow me to see if things are proportionally accurate. Decided to make the tube top rest a little bit lower, and added a bra underneath. Ended up messing with things a little bit more to try to make sure that everything was accurately positioned. There was a small break between me doing what you've seen already and this part in particular. Added the tails. And here I noted that I wanted her to be pastel goth. Here I started the line art. Once again using vector lines. And I don't think that this was even the final position for the lips, because I was trying to figure out how I wanted the lips to look. The fun thing about using vector lines is you could change line width. So you could make eyebrows and eyelashes look thicker than they were when you initially drew them. Just with small adjustments. And here I finish up the Fennec character's line art, and I start on May. I use circle tools whenever I'm doing eyes now so that I could keep things looking like they are proportionally accurate, like ellipses tools, so that, yeah, it doesn't end up looking all wonky and lopsided. I marked the dark spots on the tail with little X's for later, so I wouldn't forget. And here I start the coloring. I decided I wanted her to have a fishnet sort of thing on the top part of her top. So at first I didn't use vector lines, and then I realized that vector lines have always helped me a bit more with this, because I could set up a template a bit easier. And it took me a while to get this to be looking accurate, but I use a mesh transform to make things look like they bend with the body. And if I do the fishnet line, layer with a vector line thing, I could very easily cut off the areas that are outside the vector lines for the line art. Here's the sandy fur color. Sorry for all the jittery movement. And I was trying to think what sort of pastel goth sort of stuff she would be wearing, and I ended up deciding on a stabbed heart choker. Kept the eyes yellow like an actual Fennec would have. Yellow or brown. Felt like the yellow was a little bit more intense and matched the pastel feel. As always, I end up experimenting with new ways of drawing eyes every time I do. This way that I have in here would work better for comics if I ever do actually get around to making the comic. After doing the color flats, I decided to color the lines before working on May. I added a little jewel to represent a little blood drop at the bottom of the choker's heart. And added little shine and extra bits of jewelry because, well, we goths like to accessorize. Then I started up on May. I was using the old art that I had done for May as the colored palette. I just color dropping from the color flats that I had exported all that time ago. And I decided to do a slight redesign of her clothes, adding little stripes to the sleeves, because it felt like she wasn't detailed enough. Here I do all the fur on the tail, and I start doing the texture that I always do with the tail fur. I could do this a little bit quicker by just doing it a little bit wobbly and keeping the wobbly look, but I feel like the fur looks a lot more realistic. Takes a bit more time, but I like how it turns out. I did the colored lines, and with those lips there, I decided that I didn't want to color them the same as the fur around it. Not really much else to say other than it's therapeutic to color everything in. And here is the shirt design. I was doing a small redesign from the original, making it look a little bit more like you would find on a t-shirt. And it took me a while to get the mesh to work properly the way I wanted it to. I ended up having to undo it all like 3 times to make it line up properly with how I had the body positioned. And I was trying to figure out what type of layering I wanted to do, and I ended up going up with hard light And doing hard light allowed me to see how it would look behind the arm and then just erase that part later. A little bit of eye shine. And here I started the red lines for the background. I wanted them to be in an alleyway because it felt like that would be a place where they would be chatting. And I made a very simple layout, however I put a lot of effort into making the alleyway look the way I wanted it to. You'll see that in a bit. The dumpster I made look really gross, and then I added the brick wall that I wanted in the background. And I did this by setting up a template and just copy-pasting it until it looked the way it does now. And then I added a little door and porch area, and then I started just doing random bits of graffiti. I ended up doing UBC and my signature in the graffiti part. And I would just do things that I felt like you would see just randomly in an alleyway that has been marked up by a bunch of graffiti artists. The big moon one was probably the one I put the most effort into because, well, somebody's probably got that as a logo in this universe. Dan was here, little heart with like letter plus letter. I put Bart Simpson in the background. I always do Bart Simpson. I made a little cat face as if it was done with a marker. Did a little bit of a argument between two religious backgrounds, marking up each other's graffiti. Made a very big graffiti in the background because you always find big ones. And yeah, a lot of little pieces of graffiti you'll find are done by people with logos. Decided to make a little no graffiti sign because you see those every now and then in alleyways that end up getting covered in graffiti. There's an alleyway nearby where I am where they have one of those signs that someone just spray painted over with a bunch of white paint. And yeah, Rum Tum Tugger was a curious cat. And then I added the shading. I wanted it to be nighttime with like a few light sources in the background. Like lights that are hung up on these sides of the walls of the alley. And this would be a very intense lighting, so I tried to make things look backlit for the characters. And yeah. Made things look like they shined because of how deep the shadows got. And if anything, if I was going to change it, I would go back in and make the shadows even deeper than they ended up being in the end. Little accent lines here to show a shine. And then a tiny bit more shading that I ended up lightening when I really shouldn't have. And there we go. I think that should be just about it. And little bits of accents here and there. Cleaning up any places where there were holes and adding a little shadow there. And yeah, there we go. That was a new Fennec character in the universe of this comic that I'm probably never going to actually get around to finishing, but it's fun designing the characters nonetheless. Anyways, if you liked what you saw, like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do, and most importantly, have a good one.